Namo Guru Be Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Guru Be Namo Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Kande Laje Gwenje Doga Raga Shosa Bombe Shonze Shuje Jabo Gwenje Sena Jeba Nede Shekso Denje Nanga Sinde Bende Jeze Lama Jebe Zonga Talon Jebe Sena Shinjo Tenba Jeje Geje Sheje Chungun Jave Lode Geza Nawe Jinju Leshe Tabe Beje Lame Zebe Tongde Tembe Dende Laja Yewo Chuyen Nanzo Medo Tishen Dobe Nansen Deja Wensha Yede Chudin Jazo Shena Shinjo Chela Cheba Kanshi Tome Dune Saba Lunga Yeson Kebaran Zomba Sumje Medu Ningne Juban Jambi Soso Ningme Dude Mandu Rula Shuje Bambe Denjo Deye Gombo Juye Labjen Zeba Daja Samban Tabi Chize Laman Damba Kenam Shugu Kala Tenzin Dorjee Shida Zambe Deje Sema Sabje Chuje Chawa Abdo Namda Vese Yingle Xingba Shonjo Gola Chado Minga Tame Nangu Sugura Sidi Bando Minu Denba Tazo Chini Sabe Gewa Tendan Zhuwa Gunlo Pangbian Dan Kebra Chi Denbe Ningbo Rendo Seje Sho Mime Zebe Dejin Chenri Chime Yinbe Wangbo Jambe Yang Tubo Mali Zhong Kanjin Kebe Zujin Zonggao Ba Lo San Chabe Shabla So Mime Zebe Dejin Chenri Se Chime Yinbe Tubo Mali Zhongze Sanwe Da Kanjin Kebe Zujin Zong Lo San Chabe Sowan de Mime Zebe Dejin Chenri Se Chime Kembe Wongbo Jang Tebo Mali Zhongze Sanwe Da Kanjin Kebe Lo San Chabe Shala Sowan de Bande Zawe Lama Rinpo Taso Chivuru Bende Densho La Gaden Chimbu Kwan Kuson Toje Mudu Zendo Panden Zabe Lama Rimbo Taso Ningara Bende Densho La Gaden Chimbu Kwan Shodan Tumu Mudu Zendo So Panden Zabe Lama Rimbo Taso Ningara Benden Densho La Gaden Chimbu Kwan Chanjo Ningbu Ba Denbar Anjo Masan Jume Shera Paru Je Manye Manga Namge Ngowo Sozo Rari Ije Juyu Duzon Ye Changze Lo Deyan Ta Gade Gade Para Samgade Bode Ye So Deyan Ta Gade Para Samgade Bode Ye So Deyan Ta Gade Para Samgade Gere Tongda Jaju Shiwanda Mede Nebe Jenda Raje Nenjang Jo Sa Shimbe Jo Chujurun Jibe Sona Dola Benje Sanje Domara Sho Soje Chonam La Janjo Bado Dane Jabzo Je Dagi Chujurun Jibe Sona Dola Benje Sanje Domara Sho Soje Chonam La Janjo Bado Dane Jabzo Dagi Chujurun Jibe Sonam Je Dola Benje Sanje
Simje Tamje Tozalana Yanda was always saying you come over to Bushine, he said the Tabishi saying, Guru Shamju says, Joma since you said down December.
Let's take a moment to cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it Bodhisattva motivation, or the altruistic motivation seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of all other sentient beings. With that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta, altruistic motivation, we should participate in this Bodhisattva discourse on wisdom gone beyond. So as I mentioned last week, that this wisdom chapter is presented under certain outlines. First, there is a brief kind of a presentation, and then there is the more extensive or detailed presentation.
니빠 세 동의도 해라 디시다 집에 수제와 수tembe 거니 제와 해봐라 라시 다제바 숨들 때라 앞에 디인기 나게 해봐 제바서 타바 좀 되게 저 동의도 거봐 주바 동의 주베 리바 제와 해봐 때라 앞에 디인기 나게 해봐 Mesheva Basa Tongolosum, the Yawa, the Sing, the Itala Bishwe, Ponzak, the Judula, Zova, the Yawa, the Sing, Sing is a Tongoni, Kuzo, so Gamba Shi there. Tela kamba thawu nyenji yawa tende nangzu nisi mudiwe zube shu kansa tangasa phubo tawu se kunzu ba deba tane se nangzu nisi tumbe shu kansa tanga phubo roshin ji eba tawu thongda be deba de hije shu te namne namlane Demba nyeso iyeriwa dedo sheba wuse. Sheba wuyes, tang shebe es denyi top sumbara tamba te. Top sumbara tamba te, shi tu denyi chikro chikrowa tang. Lam ituzi denyi jinyale tabji sungri rowa. Drivu tuso tabshi ki duwe se tsonyi je rongzhi shusu ki kunyi sungzhi tu dhokwe tongto kangwa shima denyi je rinpar denyi ki tsenyi suwu tongde tongtong tenpa ne dena se yola yo moru ngosu yu shu yin shu rāng ngōsūn tu tōpe, ngōsūn sēme, yinā tāngā, yinā ka chōwa nōpe tsūki tōpa shāwō, tōdum shēbe, sōngchā tā lōya chū yīmē shēbe, tsēnyi shō tā tēndōs, 다 거기들에 다 거기서 뒤동이도 봤어 거기 타바 타발라 거기 타바 타지고 가르쳐나 동이도 그러시마다 뒤 주제가 해서 다 동이도 다가 동이도 뭐 동이도 근데 탑시를 어디 탑로 가르쳐 걸도 그러시 어디 해야지 어디 해와라 내만이 남자 해 그러시 저도 내만이 남자 해야 돼 가가 수 가서 그래서 그가 직관 내만이 니마셔마 대인 정도에 미라면 그가 최대 쇼마고 상대와 장치도 말하지 고르부 뒤나 내만이 스틸 쇼가 가지고 있다 그지 배만도 제갑도 제갑 샤르조 노조야주 수디야 데지데 요디서 뒤나 에네 내만이 사가지 내만이 그 정해에 따라 그래서마 가가 직발 내만이 해야 직발이 다 대인 군지도 저거 말도 세다 시대에 봐서 대인 해야 뭐 더버 해지 시도도 가르쳐서 어떻게 우선하듯이 야
So as we already talked about this the other day, that in order to achieve nirvana, liberation, or enlightenment, Buddhahood, one must realize emptiness or shunyata, Tongpanyi in Tibetan. And the reason why is there is no other alternative to achieve liberation and enlightenment without realizing what emptiness or shunyata, sunyata is. So that was very briefly presented in the first stanza, if you will. Why must we make efforts to realize emptiness? And so now the detailed explanation that we start is, in order to understand emptiness, what do we need to do? Are there any approaches or methods, that we need to follow? And this is where we start off with, presenting the two truths, in Tibetan. So phenomena are just innumerable, but we can classify them or categorize them, in two truths. In all the Buddhist schools of thought or tenets or siddhant, drupta in Tibetan, starting with Vaibhashika, Chittamava, all the way to the Madhyamika, everybody uses the term two truths, Temanyi, right? That is their very basis of presentation. But what does the true truth mean may not be the same in all of these schools, right? But they all use the same terminology that we classify phenomena into true truths. No.
Oh, yeah, then by here was and that in the course of Tabatum Deva Jam, don't you go Drova, don't you Drova request Java here was some there. So that Shirama daughter was the so Ronjiva Chanjiva, don't you Tawato, Dameto, don't you go use the Gomar, Dameto as the town. That Tenjua look here says in Tabato, don't you go, Dame, Chui Dame, the Kazakh Dame, Chara maybe Chipasha in the Sheda Sheda Kazakh Dame, Tony Shago, Martin, Checkers to shed it and the Tony is another Kazakh Dame talk over the Kage, don't you talk over me there in the any Tabato, Tabatella by this. Daughter Shirama or Tuzoki Lurina. It Tabas the Java, don't you matter any Karsa, Tabato Marisi. It Tabas the Java, don't you talk about Jubas Tisha. That don't buy a bear, don't you Jubi, what Java that is what the Mazo by and don't you go share. Talk about the Dash Shirama to the Mapaka. In Tabas Zolaya. Kazakh with the Digmar, don't you talk this or those do that Tamud, Tonze Tamud Tirita.
So as I mentioned it the other day, that in the lower schools of Buddhist thought or tenets, Siddhant, Drupta, they may not use the term emptiness or Tongpanyi, but they do use the word selflessness. Anathma, or Dharma in Tibetan. So according to Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas, the two lower schools of Buddhist thought, one must realize selflessness in order to achieve even just the liberation from samsara. Okay, that is a requirement. But when we say that whether you seek nirvana or enlightenment, that you must realize emptiness, that is really speaking from Prasangika Madhyamika school of thought, right, the highest Buddhist school of thought. And so according to Prasangika Madhyamika schools, even to achieve one's personal nirvana from samsara, it is not enough to realize the selflessness of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self. That's a mouthful to say, right? So that said, you have to realize emptiness. Because Prasangika Madhyamika also uses the term selflessness. They talk about selflessness of a person, and selflessness of phenomena, But as far as what selflessness is, or interchangeably what emptiness is, there is no even slightest difference between emptiness of a person or selflessness of a person, or emptiness of phenomena or selflessness of phenomena. Right? Qualitatively, emptiness of a person and phenomena are just the same. So I think in these different schools of thought, we find schools may use different reasonings to establish the true truths. So what is this self-sufficient, substantially existent self, Kangsa Rangyatube, in Tibetan? Because this is something accepted in non-Buddhist schools of thought. In my footnote, many Hindu schools of thought, that's what we're talking about, right? So they believe that apart from the psychosomatic aggregates or sagandhas, there is a person or a self that exists as a separate entity, right? So then you ask them, what is that person, separate entity from the aggregates that you posit as a substantially, self-sufficiently and substantially existent self, a person? And then some schools they refer to, it's the body. It is the rupa, aggregate, right? Form aggregate. And others might say, no, it's a kind of consciousness or perception, sheva, okay? And then somebody might say, no, we use the word atma. So maybe in English the best word we find is soul, right? So everybody comes up with different examples of what that self-sufficient, substantially existent person is, but they do believe there's something like that. But in Buddhist schools of thought, even in the lower school, they said there is no such a self. So that is the selflessness of a person, right? No.
And Kaji Kansa Shiba is in you. Kaji so is a Kaji Kansa is direct in Nisha that the Nisha that so is the Shiba is in it. But he can't do that. But the Rojati was doing Kaza Kelans the Zogi. But the New York that Karsa Soda. Kaji Shiva is in Kaji is so is in Jixi. But that the Kora Harana of Sukon Deva Meva. Takbarico, Takbai with the Jigba, the Shiro, the Kakajibar. Tabako, Jumiri, Maina, and the call Gazing by Jodo in Metavina, but late you did not shot of a Shagadi. Lay Sangi, the Junior with Lemas, and Dread Stadu, this lad. Because less I get doing you getting a concert, who would the Takwashin, who did it Shakata. The Rolu, the non-president, did that because of Tabayoma, the Sina Lemashi, but the Shiva Shimas of the Takamari, concert using songs, and the less I get the doing you getting a concert, wood of the concert, Chickman and the Jujiba songs, and Tigia. You did choose the room, Tata radio is Chirub in the Kazataba, you did the Karasils. Taba Mayuko, you and a less I get driven money, driven you get the Lemas, and this on the table, so drink it.
So as Geshe explained, from a broader perspective, in the non-Buddhist schools of thought, i.e., my footnote, number of Hindu schools, they said that there is a self-sufficient, substantially existent person or a self. Okay? Of course, then they give you different examples. But broadly stated, many of them refers to the form aggregate as that self or the person, and many might point it to some kind of consciousness or a mind or a perception. Yeah. So those are two broad categories. And so such a person, they assert, is a permanent, unchanging, right? That person cannot undergo any changes or disintegration, right? Why they posit that such a self is permanent is because they said otherwise we really cannot present the theory of karma, right? Then how can you talk about who does a particular kind of a karma or action and who experiences that action? If the person is permanent, well, then that person does the action, that person can experience the results. If the person is impermanent, then they said, well, it seems like the person who does the action collapses or whatever is right, impermanent, right? Then the person who experiences the result is a different person. Therefore, they said the theory of karma cannot be presented if the person or the self is not posited as a permanent entity. Yeah? So that's their justification or rationale. Of course, the Buddhists, contest that. They said, a person is not permanent; it is impermanent. But still, we could still, have the basis for the theory of karma because we can look at the mental continuum of a person, mental continuity of a person, and on the basis of that continuum, we can posit the law of karmic action and results.
我这好像对宇宙的我就说的，干啥？当中在你想，看一人我大概是好像走这么，其实我刚刚刚才父母同学大概些，他让的这个人，看到这不也干啥？大概的都嘛是吧？没大把的效果的，这俩开始个父母错，开始的效果没着，其他嘛父母运着效果的。 忙下去这个是西吧，一个那么西吧先，西吧可是做小这个，吃住就在门口，叫完了那个西吧的，这是生意那意思的哦，这是我做着叫完了的，这个的西吧的这个是，他的第一个是我刚才说是数字可是睡觉了呢，可吃住在那个西嘛住嘛意思，是这个睡住西边就住个在。 근데 가서 생기들 생기기 남시스 먼저 시바 강가 시작을 생기 나기스도 시도도 그게 여시면 저 남시 참을 저라 완전 진짜 저 가서 생기를 권에서 누구가 되랬어 이도도 시도도 가도 그 여시면 참저거 말봐 시도 시도도 여시면 남시 걸 유승해도 될 손자 他哪怕梦想这个对象他西吧，他那当中在呢，看着当中在呢，小个那个生意的开个是西吧，生意那些什么，他看见西吧刚刚学个嘛的，看见西路的上了，别个叫什么差不多如果是西吧，一个那些，我第一次看
他。So those non-Buddhist schools of thought who assert that there is a permanent self or a person as a separate entity from psychosomatic aggregates, and that person is findable under analysis, right? If you ask the question, what is that person, who is that person, we should be able to find something to point at, here it is, right? It has to be findable, right, in there, and so therefore, the term they use is Atma. So Atma is the person, it's permanent entity, and it's findable under analysis. Okay. So in the Buddhist schools of thought now, of course, Buddhists don't accept Atma, but Anatma, right, non-self. But that being said, in the lower schools of Buddhist thought, say Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas, where they do accept that, they refute substantially self-sufficient and substantially existent self, right? So if you ask, is person findable under analysis, these schools will say yes, right? So, and some of them, for example, Vaibhashikas, they somehow refer to the kind of continuum of aggregates, right? They said that's the person. Okay? And most other Buddhist schools of thought, lower schools of Buddhist thought, they will point at mental consciousness, right? Yiji number 7. Not all types of consciousnesses, because to posit something as a person, it has to exist somebody who can take a rebirth, isn't it? And so therefore, sensory consciousnesses, they do not go after life, right? When we die, all the sensory perceptions or consciousnesses, they collapse, right? That they cease to exist. So what goes after death? Something exists that goes after death and takes a rebirth. So many Buddhist schools of thought say, aha, that is the mental consciousness, right? We call the 6th consciousness. So that goes from one life to another life. So that is the findable person, right? If you think in terms of person has to be found under analysis, right? That's the supposition there, okay? And so that mental consciousness, relatively speaking, is a subtle form of consciousness. It's not gross like the sensory consciousnesses or perceptions. So as Geshe explained, of course, in Buddhist schools of thought, in the non-Buddhist schools of thought, mostly we're referring to Hindu schools of thought, because both accept that there has to be a basis for the theory of karma to function, law of cause and effect, right? And so, because both believe that person are seeking moksha, that's the liberation, isn't it? Or a nirvana or enlightenment. And there has to be a person or a self, otherwise, who achieves the moksha or who doesn't achieve the moksha, who is stuck in samsara. Yeah? And so because of that, belief system, so they come up with different, philosophies and presentations here. So what is very vital here, as Geshe emphasizes, is that when we talk about a person or a self, maybe we should differentiate between there is a self or a person, self of a person that actually exists. That is the basis of law of karma and the results. So that self exists conventionally, okay? So we are not refuting or denying that self of a person, which is the basis of law of karmic actions and results. But then there is a kind of self of a person that is just fabricated, a supposition, it does not exist, okay? And so what is the fabrication? That's why we said in the non-Buddhist schools of thought, so then they started to come up with the notion of Atma, or a permanent person, right? That's a fabricated, self. It doesn't exist. In the Buddhist schools of thought, from Savatandika, Madhyamika, down below to the Vaibhashikas, right? We leave the Prasamgika on the top alone. Okay, we're not touching it at the moment. So all of them said person has to be findable, right? Under analysis. So what is that? Then most of them say it is the mental consciousness. Okay, that is the person. And that's the basis of performing negative actions, experiencing negative results, performing positive actions, experiencing positive results, right? That person exists, right? It's findable in the Buddhist schools of thought in the lower schools. So what kind of self doesn't exist, according to Vaibhashikas and Sautantika, there is no self-sufficient and substantially existent person or a self. That is the non-existent self of a person, according to those schools. That doesn't exist. But self or person exists, and what is that? It's the mental consciousness that is the basis of law of karmic action results, right? So it's very important for us to be able to tease out the kind of self of a person that is existent, right? Because otherwise, then we have no way to talk about being in samsara or being liberated from samsara. There's no basis at all, right? So there has to be person, but then there is also non-existent self or a person, the kind of self that's just fabricated in the non-Buddhist schools of thought or in the Buddhist school of thought, right? So that needs to be refuted, you know.
Kansa be kya thoma me tata pati be dungai ram na zo nyung tuya kare se de su su kansa da se de shui da so de ki miksa de su su me ni wa tije jil ten lokwa shu ne dungai nya ra ba ta kheda de damashi na ka se shu kheda de ye da sum se shira te zo ne ga shem sha go mo she de shu go mo she de ti go zu zu de ten le pa du za le ne kansa da me 다 쉬기 다음에 가사 다음에 근데 딱죠 가사 될라서 그러와 이 다음에 쉬기 다음에 나기 부모 나도 쉬기 다음에 나 간지 이제 쉬기 다음에 가사 제메서 저 되게 샤 말이스.
So from Buddhist point of view, we could establish selflessness or Dharma on every phenomenon, everything that exists. Yeah? All phenomena are selfless. Yeah? But among those selflessnesses, so to speak, that really deserves our attention or focus is the selflessness of a person. Why? Because of not realizing the selflessness of the person since beginningless time until now, we have been going round and around in samsara, right? We got into this loopy-loop thing. Right? I'm not realizing that. Okay? So if we realize the selfness of a person, then we can, untie this knot and get out of, samsara. So therefore, the selflessness of a person seems to matter a lot. But that being said, selfness of a phenomena is not something unrelated to the person, right? When we talk about selfness of a phenomena, Choji Tangme in Tibetan, we are talking about the selflessness of aggregates. Right, aggregates of a person, aggregates of person are empty of self, right? That is the selflessness of phenomena. So it's related to the person, but it's, so to speak, more important. Our sort of our business, so to speak, is to focus on the selflessness of a person.
Shira Lu Shia de da God Shugo Dami da Dami say Tony Shia de Ro. Shita take da de Yada in Gaje da the Tiny Diva da Nisha. But the Tiny Diva da the Juju Tata the Gora Mujo Kande Kade Sia del Shiro Chizanda Shiro Takbaris love and number some year that Ronju Menzir Sida in saying that he was killing Goro. Don't the Niashi. Tenzin Dorjee, and the but Topper doesn't but the 10 evening to the young Maris.
No, so.
Jokes that you said, jokes that the gun but the top one of my way. You got ready to go to Joseph River. Jokes that had the cost of so much of Joseph the Silver. It is a time, mistake, jokes that is in the corner, took up to Mendus. But this, he has said, the Pumble Tanzam was those Koro took up to your Maris. What is it? This was the in the Datilla, there were Toma in the Geshe Gyeltsen, the Tanya Dachi Yinshi, Geshe Gyeltsen, Rayati Zio Dong, Rahi Motorsa, the Tara Mosha, that Ninja here, in the Rayati Zio Dachi, the Tato Zio that Ninja Shower, what is it? She said, take it, needs you with that country. Lord, Yego, that country. The should have looked the don't show this on the march out of the what they take you or that. Tiny even that, Geshe Dati shed it was. What did that? A tiny even that they do young dance with shit. But they do in the dot river, the schedule lot. She just showed in the domain the young there. She said, Jawad was the Kazakh. In Dhamma then was the Egypt Kazakh then two then go. It is on the TikTok Yego or Kazakh said the Carson that Nangwe said, 10 years, Tobeta was a dozen Nijo Maris. That Ranji music Nijo singing 10 years Nijo Maris said, doesn't matter. What you get now, in the tiny Daji, or to get the here with that was the Shirley Mozo, or to get a teaching of Doyati, he said, Tomboy, heavy, she know the or Grace idea, Geshe Gyeltsen.
So this whole chapter on the wisdom or Gyan of the guide really deals with selflessness and emptiness, right? Dharma and Tongyi. Yeah? And so the whole chapter is kind of trying to present selflessness and emptiness from different perspectives, and then refuting different perspectives from Prasangika Madhyamika point of view. So it's quite a complex chapter, as we can see. So for us to be able to delve into all these complexities, there are certain things, basics, if you want to call it, that we must always keep in our mind. Okay? So as Geshe said, that when we talk about self of a person, then we say there is what called conventional self of a person that exists, Tanya Yubeta, right? That we have to accept. Yeah? But then there is the kind of a self of a person that doesn't exist. We call it Gagjeta, the object of negation, or the self that is the object of negation or refutations, right? So we have to make sure that we keep those two types of self separately. Okay? Don't confuse one with the other. That's very vital, right? So when we talk about self of a person, there are two kinds of self we are dealing with. One, conventional self or existent self of a person, that is the basis of law of karmic actions and results, okay, that really exists. Okay? And then there is the kind of self of a person that doesn't exist, which we call it the self that is the object of negation or refutation, Gagjeta in Tibetan. Okay? And so what is that object of negation self? Of course, different schools of thought, Buddhists and non-Buddhists, will come up with different viewpoints, as we have seen. So in non-Buddhist schools of thought, i.e. Hindus, my footnote mostly, they said that person or a self is a permanent entity, right? Atma, soul. And it has to be findable, right? If you look for it, it should be something we should be able to find it, pinpoint it, okay? That's their supposition. Then in the Buddhist schools of thought, from Saivatandika, Madhyamika down to the Vaibhashika school, they also believe that a person or a self has to be findable under analysis, okay? And then most of them say, what is that? They say it is the mental consciousness of a person, the subtle one, not the sensory consciousnesses, okay? And now if we ask, what is the self that's the object of negation in Buddhist schools of thought, then we come up with different viewpoints here. The one we have already mentioned is that Vaibhashikas and Sautatikas, they think that there is no self-sufficient, substantially existent self. That is the self that needs to be refuted or that needs to be negated, isn't it? there is no self-sufficient and substantially existent self. To perceive such a person or self is a misconception. Yeah? And so we have to recognize that and refute that, right? But then according to Prasangika Madhyamika schools, they said there is no intrinsic existence. There is no intrinsic self, isn't it? And that's the object of negation. That's the self that's negated from Prasangika Madhyamika point of view. And then the other, Buddhist thoughts in between there. We're just kind of throwing some examples here. So according to Prasangika Madhyamika schools, self of the person is not, should not be findable under analysis. Okay? So what is the self of a person? According to Prasangika Madhyamika school, self is nothing but a label, something merely labeled onto the aggregates. That's all there is to it. Okay? Self of a person is merely labeled onto the aggregates of a person. If you try to look for it, you cannot find it. Yeah? And the example Geshe has given is the table, right? So we call that table, and we're happy with that, right? We have no disagreement. That is fine. But then if you try to find what is table about this, tableness, right? So we look at it as 4 legs. Okay, is every one of these legs a table? No, isn't it? Then we tear up the whole thing. Well, there is no table. We put them together. Is the whole thing a table? From Prasangika Madhyamika point of view, neither every part of the table is a table, nor the collection of the table is a table. It just merely labeled onto this thing put together. It's called table. It functions as a table. That's all there is to it. Okay? Whereas those schools, whether Buddhist or non-Buddhist, who believe there is something findable, they might differ from the Prasangika viewpoint. Is that clear?
Okay. Yeah. Nangwal Druta Masa Shidua, what did I sure was a Yezu to Togi Dermasi and the Meda Yard Shiru Durama, the Nayos, Tangja was it, and Rigi was it, Karta de Tangja was, Shida was it, Silver was, Young Way was, Rigi was, what did it to daughter and Shiru. Tia Gangalia, Chidan, there were no Tiba Mabo, Mudio Mabo, or Tijeshin, that did young Bessa, the Java killing or more, Lendry killing more, what she was the Ganga, Lendry killing, get a shed that things on the Lendry not get ten. Young Beba, in the Jawashima Mesa, and the court said the Jewish in my shin, and Mamesha, never would. Yamar Siwara. No, sure. You must send that the Ganga in the Lendry, then Kazak, then the Javadas and killing her. No, Chipper, I think I say it about Midari, Madojina. Lendry, they were getting better.
So, in the Buddhist schools of thought, broadly stated, we talk about 4 schools of tenets of thoughts, right? We have Vaibhashika, Chedamava, we have Substantikas, Dodeba. We have Chittamatrins, mind-only school, Simthamba. Then we have Madhyamikans or the middle way school. Okay, and they may differ, right, with the presentation of the true truth there. Yeah, but all of them believe that there has to be basis for the law of karmic actions as results, and so therefore, right, they do assert that there is what called conventionally existent I or a self. That's the basis for actions and outcomes. Now, in the non-Buddhist schools of thought, as I said, i.e. Hindus mostly, right? We are not talking about every non-Buddhist schools of thought in this context. There are many schools. Hindus have, right, so many schools. But largely, we talk about 5 major ones at the time, right, we're dealing with. And so one is the Charvakas, Yangpenpa. Okay? So they don't believe, right, life after death. Okay? This is it. Everything you can experience, see, feel, this is all there is. Beyond this, there's nothing exists. So they don't believe in the law of karmic action and results. Okay? And so that's one very unique non-Buddhist school, right? They only believe here and now. After this, adios, that's it. Don't ask me anything. Then nothing exists. What are you asking me about? Something that doesn't exist. Okay. But the rest, other four major non-Buddhist schools, they do accept, okay, that there is a life after, okay, that actions have consequences, right? So they have to posit a basis for actions and outcomes. So they are not Charvakas, right? They say there is life beyond, okay? So those schools would include the enumerators. We call it Tangjenpa, okay? That's one school. And then there's a Rikchepa, the schools that follow the Vedanta, right, school. Then they have a Chitapa, Vaisheshikas, not Vaibhashikas, okay, Vaisheshikas. And then there is the Chirpupa, I think the Jainisms, right, literally means the naked ones. So I shouldn't translate literally here, right, it makes sense. But they do believe, all of these non-Buddhist schools of thought, Hindus believe that there is life after, actions have consequences, so therefore, right, they have to deal with the basis for actions and outcomes like Buddhist schools do. Okay? So it's very important for us to be able to keep those things in places.
Nangwe dinyi den ba na kozo yang shizatel ya kaji ni zenga chang de yang ce ge tong gu se ya zhe shi kono ya shizaka ga zu dom zhu ja ne en na lo de dan zhe de men ra ma bo yo res.
Awesome. So as Geshe explained, that we look at the four Buddhist schools of thought or tenets. We look at the five major non-Buddhist schools, except the Charvakas who don't believe life after. All other schools, right, they believe in the theory of karma, law of karma, okay, and life after. And so therefore, every one of these schools try to present realities from their perspectives, right? We use the term true truths here. And so therefore, some schools might presentation of, well, we believe in 25 objects of knowledge, right? We have believed in this many kinds of perceptions. So then they will come up with all of these, presentations talking about the realities and the subjectivities,
What is that teacher said the direction Juptama Juptama to Yunati Tawa the teacher was the Kajeta in because so they took Namsha of Hako, the ended. They do the Muya Kare, the young get of Kare, the Sure, the Koyuya, Tower to Kare, what direction, and the Chino is Shumuya, still Tarban to get them in the ocean, and not so young water. She needs you the Kajikora, what is you also the Amjul Pique, Gidia, the Kora needs you the way Tishu Masuna, in Tigal, she Lord Pique, Lord that Jenny. And he needs you to be conditioned. The what he has on and called news he said, so be long shivena, and called the Gun Yunga Chago Marva. She is on the when he thought then about to do. She thought be long beautiful the news of the career. She said, needs you to tell a pass where the case of the gorgeous. She did not sort of go a career. Mekoya career. Tanyo Shado Kajedo, easy with Goya Cardo, but he not see that doge, Damia surgeries. Said then down is that's true, the Shumi said, citizen. But she's a tired, that the Goya did Papa Resas, did the Carson Digital Sado, or did Palma some Jawara.
No.
Or two situation, and she said, near down there, but did not he also be a long dot of Chevy in the Dungame Charter or this is the. In the where you did of this.
So these different Buddhist or non-Buddhist schools of thought, they present their philosophies or tenets, right? The Tibetan word is called Drupta, which is the translation of the Sanskrit word Siddhant. So we call it tenets or philosophies, right, liberally here, okay? And so why do they have to come up with tenets and philosophies or whatever you want to call it? Because many of these schools believe, right, that we experience happiness, sadness, right, ups and downs in our lives. Then we said, what brings all this goodness and badness in life, right? and why and how and who is really experiencing all of this happiness and suffering and yagadi, all of that, right? So these are the big questions they are trying to deal with, and that's why they come up with different schools of thought. Because after all, right, everybody believes I don't want suffering. Nobody wants, right? I want to end the suffering and find happiness. And so that is the supposition, and then they have to come up with, what brings suffering, what can get rid of the suffering, what is beyond this existence. All these tenets, right, come up, and they're dealing with that. And so as Geshe said, so from this, schools of thought point of view, really to be able to understand accurately realities as they are, right, is essential, isn't it? Realities exist. So if we misunderstand them, if we have distorted perceptions of the realities, so these distorted perceptions or misconceptions, they bring a lot of suffering and unwanted problems in the life, isn't it? So to be able to resolve these problems and unwanted suffering, we have to get to the realities. What is the reality, or what are the realities? As we accurately, understand and realize the realities, we are able to get rid of the distortions, and then we are able to end the suffering. So that is the kind of a background, stuff that we have to keep in mind. So as we try to grasp the realities as they are, then on the basis of these realities, or we might use the word truths, Tembani in this case, now we started to understand, okay, what are the things that I want? What are things that I should adopt, I should keep, I should cultivate, I should adopt, right? What are the things I should get rid of, I should abandon, right? That really brings a lot of headaches in my life. Are you with me? And what are the things I really don't have to do anything? Call it neutral things, isn't it? So we have, things that are positive, that brings happiness, here and beyond. And so what are the things that I must do to be able to experience that happiness here and hereafter? What are the things that bring unwanted sufferings in here, hereafter? And what are the things I must not do and I must get rid of, isn't it? Then what are the things that are really irrelevant, so to speak, to my happiness or suffering, right? Just let it be. I don't have to get involved in such matters, so to speak, right? So we can classify things into three types. Things to be adopted, cultivated, promoted, whatever you want to say, practice, and things that need to be gotten rid of, abandoned, stop it, remove it, whatever, and things just let them be, right? You have nothing to do with them, so to speak, okay? So I just gave you a very sketchy picture of what's involved here, isn't it? Even dealing with schools of thought is done, but every school has its own like a whole philosophy, and they have their own treatises, right? If you really want to know the details about non-Buddhist schools of thought tenets or the Buddhist school of thought tenet, then we have to read those treatises dealing with tenets, isn't it? Because this textbook is not dealing with tenets in particular there. I just gave you this kind of a rough idea about what we are dealing with here. And so based upon those reality perception checking, then now it comes to choice making, isn't it? What do you want in life, and how do you get what you want, and what you should do or shouldn't do that you don't want. Things happen here and hereafter. So all that choice making, right, all that practice of abandonment and cultivation then comes through such dealings with the realities.
那个我提醒我，咱工作这边天气挺下的，可是工作他们都那么意思的是些，你工作那么的干的些呢，对的，可这当时对工作那么些的，这是我的，内容这我没有可能。我说的这到的有啥关注下头是工作那么些，差东西的统统那么些我说，我这是个这到工作那么的干的些呢。这是我大概说每个同样按照还是偏下些，统统对吧是东西些，和统统来就老的工作人员都是个对吧？我这是的当，我的我是对吧的，这是我是，我这他还是没用起说的这个道德嘛这是我，一些不多还是这是，工作这边是这个是虽然到时候每个同样也按照还也是。人家也是那做小的，一个的工作他们学个什么？现在广州他的有的些话的，刚刚在工作他们的，统统他们他在广州，这些有的没就是这样的。
So that brings us to the stanza 2 in chapter 9. Because I decided not. Mostly, I don't want to lie here, read from this translation or that translation to confuse you. I'm just simply going to stick to Geshe-la's explanation, right, just to do justice to here. And so that's why we have to deal with Tenpa Nyi, the two truths. Okay? Sheja, objects of knowledge, or called phenomena, can be classified into two truths. Okay? And so what are the two truths? The two truths are Gyaltsen Tenpa, which we normally translate as conventional truth or reality. Gyaltsen Tenpa, ultimate truth or reality. The Sanskrit word for the Gyaltsen Tenpa is the Samvrit Satya. So this, I think, as a translator, we have issue translating in English to get the whole sense of it. Right? When we say conventional, it works fine for a while, and then we have to find another one. Then somebody says, oh, relative truth. Well, it works for a while. Then, okay, now what? Well, find another one. Right now we deal with. Now we have a deceptive truth. Are you with me? So that's, I think, the problem of the translation, not to do with the original text here, okay, in English language. And so let's say, for the time being, conventional truth or the deceptive truth here are the truths that you and I experience in our daily life, the truths that we experience through our sensory perceptions, isn't it? Everything we see, everything we hear, auditory sound, and the things we experience through olfactory consciousness, and so all the things that we experience in our daily life are regarded as conventional reality or truth, or deceptive truth, or relative truth. Okay, Samvriti Satya. Ultimate truth, Paramartha Satya, Gyaltsen Tenpa, it only refers to emptiness. In Sanskrit, we call it shunyata. In Pali, we call it sunata. And so emptiness is the only ultimate truth we are dealing with. And so here in the text, it says that something to the extent that ultimate truths are not something experienced by the mind. They are not objects of the mind. What does that mean? Mean. What kind of mind we are dealing with? As Geshe explained, ultimate truth is not the object of our sensory perceptions, isn't it? It's not something we see with our visual perception. It's not something we can understand through, the olfactory perception and so forth. Ultimate truth is something that we can realize through mind, mental consciousness. Yeah, through mental consciousness. That's the meaning of this particular statement. So in other words, that conventional realities or truths are, relatively speaking, are more visible and coarse form, isn't it? Right? Whereas ultimate truth is very subtle. And Geshe is chuckling over this, right? What we experience every day, even this moment or everyday life, are the conventional truths, right? Maybe we hardly experience the ultimate truth, right? That is, at the moment, seems beyond us. Because ultimate truth is not perceived by visual consciousness, by olfactory consciousness, by the tactile consciousness, any other sensory consciousnesses.
我这觉得等于记住这个松谁多，等于记住这个松谁，可能是有的，可是让人这把这不是 뭐도지 라이 맞아 대하고는 이네 대시고로 그래서 딱딱 동주고로 다야 라이 맞아 레스들이야 배 때문에 소리지 상어다서는 세다 동주고 세다 뒤지도 대이 직접적 소소해야 돼 라이 맞아 고네 이 샤지에 저 유저가가야 태양이 그게 남자죠 어디가 장네 세다 뒤에 대이 직접적 소소해서 그 구조 대바때 거기서 돈도 대바 그게 민으로 돈도 대바때 구조 대바 민으로 시서 나를 니가 그게 시든으로 차 나를 차 대바 차서는 다 동의사 디레샤스 구조도 유디레샤 거의 다 디레지 조 중조지 정지레샤 지금은 메타를 메레샤서 디제 또서는 이 대이 직접적 소소해서 다 라이 줘야 머스는 때문에 소리고 애니야 렌제스 지대는 파이다냐 라이 줘봐 줄려오는 애 타이 가롱 두고로 진짜 디걸이야 바로 저사게 딱딱 저사데 나가 파고 뭐 마시고 세다 세다로야 다 딱딱로야 되세요 그 바로 또 마셔버지 스사 대 티데 파 스사 좀 대 스사에는 이거 내가 싫어요 봐라 그 파고 좀 이해해서 세대 동의다 저 레제 매바줘야 저다 동의 대버자 내가 쉬어요 다들 제를 보시고 때는 파지마다 시페지 장시 매바시데 제 매바사야 뭐 지금 여바 샤부도 저거로 어디 다 가지
The two truths they complement each other. It's very important to understand the complementarity, looks like a mantra I'm reciting here, between the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. In other words, when we deal with these two truths, we have clear idea, concept in our mind, wow, this is what ultimate truth means. This is what conventional truth means. And such understanding should not invalidate each other, isn't it? The understanding of ultimate truth should not invalidate or de-authenticate. Is that English new word? I made it up. The conventional reality, and understanding of the conventional reality should not invalidate the ultimate reality. They go together. Okay? They are buddies, metaphorically speaking. Yeah. That's, by the way, metaphor I threw. Kishore didn't say that. Anyway. So that's why understanding emptiness is really walking through a very fine line. If we tip a little bit to one side, we are going to fall into one of the two extremes. The extreme of eternalism, taktha in Tibetan, then extreme of nihilism, cheda, right? And it's very easy to tip off and get stuck into one of these. So from Prasangika Madhyamika point of view, all phenomena are empty of intrinsic existence, right? Rangshinji Madhu. Nothing exists intrinsically or in or of themselves. Okay. Now that is the ultimate reality. Right? Now, if we are not very careful to understand what it really means, we might either, if understand that, wow, that means nothing exists at all. Okay. Right? So now we have become a nihilist, right? Emptiness of intrinsic existence is translated into nothing exists at all and do ever what we want, and we fall into nihilism, isn't it? And so on the other hand, we said, well, how can it be? Nothing exists at all. Law of karma exists. I experience the outcomes of the karma. So now believe that karmas exist intrinsically, isn't it? In and of themselves. Now we fall into the extreme of eternalism, isn't it? So we find it very hard. We said that if everything is empty of intrinsic reality, means nothing exists at all. And then we think that everything exists, so therefore they must exist intrinsically. And so we get caught up in one of these two extremities or the extreme viewpoint, and that's why we fail to understand the ultimate reality. Understanding the emptiness of intrinsic reality, right, properly means that despite or in spite that of all things don't exist intrinsically, yet everything exists, they function just fine. Are you with me? Although things are empty of intrinsic reality, law of karmic actions and outcomes, they just produce their results, right, accordingly, and that's very feasible. Understand? So that's what we call how the two truths complement each other. That by understanding, one truth, we do not invalidate the other truth, and vice versa.
that is saying of the that consa lazy double. Lazy double consa the good of the machine. Lazy machine to be tongue by the Tono de machine. What did I hear about the good of the Tono de social tati of the Kaka direction Maris.
So if we give an example, of course, Geshe used the Tibetan name Lechin that always comes in the textbooks, right? It could be John or Mary or Sally or Tenzin or whatever, right? We're talking about Lechin is the name of a person. So there is a person called Lechin, right? John or Sally or Tenzin exists. I mean, that is a conventional reality truth. But that Sally, whatever John or Lechin does not exist intrinsically in and of itself or himself or herself. That is the ultimate reality, isn't it? So ultimate reality and conventional reality are not way apart from each other, isn't it? On the basis of a phenomenon, we can establish the two truths, right? Two truths. And so that's important for us to understand, right? There is a person called, whatever the name that person is, conventionally exists, but that person does not exist intrinsically, so that is the ultimate reality of the person.
That change of Shantideva, that didn't know the music, no music, because of that they took by Tondam Shadow, to see the bed in the Murti, see the wrong also the way and all, no to the music tomate, and it no to music, because of the wrong also the law, no to the tomate, Tondo de Shantideva.
So definitionally, another word, English word I make it up, from definition point of view. Okay, let's get a little technical here. Conventional truth or reality, Samviti Satya, Kuntapdamba, is posited as the reality, right, in relation to its direct perception, where there is a disparity between how it appears and how it exists, isn't it? Okay. So things that appear dualistically to the direct perceptions of those things are called conventional truths or realities, right, by definition. And ultimate truth is posited as something that, exists just the way it appears to exist, non-dualistically, right, to its direct perception. So such a thing is called ultimate reality or truth. Are you with me? Maybe I'll repeat one more time, right? Conventional reality or the truth, Kunsop right, is the object of dualistic perceptions, right, direct perception, because things appear to them in one way, they exist in another way. There is a disparity between appearance and their existence. Okay? So such things are, by definition, called conventional realities. Ultimate truth is something that appears, that exists just the way it appears. There is no gap. There is no disparity between its appearance and its existence to its direct perception. So it's a non-dualistic, right, perception. So that's how we could also differentiate between the ultimate reality and the conventional reality.
What the Kanozin is a direction, this is a long was of the Changi. The Kuni top songs is a and the good of them, but they began Shemmer of it, also they were Yaga, direct Navia, Kuni Kanga, then for the Tata good of them, Lidik, Tanya Chaji Navia, and the paint of your mother. Say the Kuni Choman of your Marisu, that top doing is.
Nice. So these two truths, right, are of course different the way we looked at them from definition point of view. But it's not that one is better than the other, or one is superior and one is inferior. There's no such thing. It's not like, conventional reality are kind of a little bit down there. It's the ultimate reality here, right? No. They are on the equal footing, Okay, we cannot talk about one that's good and others bad, or one that's superior and others inferior. No. So as Geshe explained, that Lama Tsongkhapa or Rinpoche, who is watching me from behind there, in his Lekshe Nyingpo, Essence of Eloquent Explanation, describes, as Geshe explains, that there are three ways in which things may appear to our perceptions. Yeah? So if we can somehow clarify in our mind how this is working out, then it will help us to be able to understand the realities better. Number one, things may appear to our perception as truly existent or intrinsically existent. Okay? That's one possibility. I think we are talking from footnote, Prasangika point of view. Okay? We are true existence, inherent existence, all mean the same thing. We are using all kinds of words, right? The same. Yeah. It's possible that things may appear to us, our perceptions, as non-truly existent or non-intrinsically existent. That's another possibility, isn't it? It's possible that things may appear to our perceptions as neither truly existent nor non-truly existent, the third option. Are you with me? So if we can somehow in our mind clarify those three different ways, possibilities of how things could appear to perceptions, yeah? So that will help us to be able to understand realities better. Why these things matter is that there are a lot of misunderstandings and misrepresentations of emptiness, right? Some think that, well, until you realize emptiness, then you have to be careful with your actions of body, speech, and mind, right? Do the positive thing, avoid the negative thing. Once you realize emptiness, you're free to do anything. Nothing matters, positive or negative. Such a wrong understanding is presented. Looks like once you realize emptiness, then you get a free ticket to do anything. That's the very wrong representation, So we have to be careful with that. And as Geshe emphasized this point, and that, as Gaden also talked about, that even though things are empty of true existence or intrinsic existence, right, they do exist, they function visibly, isn't it? So that's the importance of that. Because oftentimes, as we said before, people think that emptiness of true existence or intrinsic existence means things don't exist at all. So the nothingness comes to the mind, right? So that is the nihilism. Or that well, something has to exist truly, right? And then we have the eternalism kicks in. So we are not able to really understand the middle view there. Understanding emptiness means that we should be comfortable to accept that all things exist and functions as they are, despite the fact that they are empty of true existence, intrinsic existence.
What they 지성 거는 나와야다시 동부 메다스야 개체지로 시다 디스다 디 tengyu도 tumu 마요 좀 디르세는 해 동부에 가서 메다스야 도 정신이 매매 인자 이는 윤제 샤지가가 되게 요리세 예바 이선은 될 가르쳐 왔다 동부에 메 가서 the meta says then they didn't bring him you may was you was social, you should not go to you in the integrate.
No.
Don't be meta
Meta also.
That now you that is Harsati. Don't be meta says that now you that is Rahir did
You
don't
didn't.
be no, you just said they didn't you take it.
No.
In the you must because you do, they didn't you go.
No.
The meta said, I think she done Ranji with the Kagachiba to one.
No, so.
That don't be meta says, tell you, she should say to one.
No,
So
so.
the Ranji is the Chinese take over me. Ranji Joanna, Karen Nova Yaga, do you just out to me, Chavo.
No,
So
so.
this house
No,
in the Chinese take me in the don't be meta says, tell you to my. The London of your money. No, it doesn't. Don't just tell you. Tell you that you say,
no.
what is it?
In the presentation of the true truths, often we hear it say that realizing emptiness helps us to eliminate the extreme of eternalism, right? And but that's accepted by many Buddhist schools of thought, right? So why we have eternalistic view is we have not yet realized the view of emptiness. Once we realize it, then we realize that nothing exists truly or intrinsically. So therefore, eternalism is gone there, but Prasangika Madhyamikans, right, one of the unique position is Tongbe Metta Sevata, as we find in Lama Tsongkhapa's three principal paths, Lamso Namsom, right? Geshe recited the whole line. That appearances eliminate the extreme of existence, meaning eternalism, right? And the emptiness eliminates the extreme of nihilism, isn't it? That's a very unique perspective of the Prasangika Madhyamika school. Only they're able to do that. So the reason is that, Prasangika said that all things are empty of intrinsic realities, Rangshinji Manduba, right? Nonetheless, law of karmic actions and outcomes function as they do, isn't it? That feasibility is not diminished or invalidated by any means. Because things are empty of intrinsic realities, therefore we can make changes, isn't it? Right? We can get rid of things. We can cultivate, adopt new things. What allows for that, by being able to change things, is because things do not exist intrinsically. If they do, you can't do anything with them, right? Because things are empty of intrinsic reality, so you can change it the way you wanted it, so to speak. So therefore, the emptiness eliminates the nihilism there. Now, the appearances, dependent arising, appearances, right? Dependent arising means that something exists, isn't it? That's the dependent arising means. So, appearance of dependent arising eliminate the extreme of what we call the eternalist, the extreme of eternalism, yourself. Okay, so that is the unique thing in the Prasangika Madhyamika soul that Lama Tsongkhapa captures in his poetic expressions of the three principal paths.
What is it? That's don't you know, some of the things she was in the garage of the lady, easy to share do you know? Any Tony coordinate somebody, so that Tony jump Google Christian, lady get kids to do this. And the Tony she's a lot of going to work, payment of charge. What is it?
In other words, as our masters have got this to say, if you are meditating on emptiness, right, you understood what it is and you're really meditating on emptiness, the more you familiarize your mind with emptiness, it really helps you to develop a stronger conviction in the law of karmic actions results. So that means your understanding of emptiness is on the track, isn't it? On the other hand, the more you meditate on emptiness, your conviction in the law of cause and effect, it diminishes. It is somehow negatively affected. That means you got it wrong. You know, you are meditating on emptiness in the wrong way.
What did that? Because don't you coordinate so much on the door? Really, ever share do you know? And don't you coordinate some risk? The mother coordinate the door of mercy. Lamrin to the media, you're
No. So what Geshe just said, right, it is something stated in the treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, Lamrim treatises, where the more you meditate on emptiness, the more your mind becomes habituated, acquainted with emptiness. That helps you to develop more conviction of karmic action result. That means, you are on the right track. The more you meditate on emptiness, you start to lose your conviction in law of cause and effect. It's negative effects that means, you got your meditation wrong on emptiness.
Karsa donyi siya da geshe she da ko so do Geshe Phuntsok shi ko donyi siya de ya jewa ji ko shi de donyi do to mo shi do shi ja wa di ba re karsa
No.
可是从说么是吧第一东西他把的多么意思对吧所以东西都是从哪里的对吧错是不啥物事是不是所以讲jewa ji ko shi de pen do ma是吧
No, sir. Great Indian master Aryadeva in his Shikapa, Chatuk Shatak of 400 stanzas on emptiness, middle way, states that, to be able to realize, understand emptiness, we have to accumulate a lot of merit, positive energy. Just simply exercising intellectual exercises of the emptiness is not enough to be able to understand emptiness. In other words, we cannot just pursue emptiness intellectually, right, kind of head stuff, and don't accumulate merit. It really requires the backing of positive energy or punya or merit.
这些东西你要不要？国这现在朋友先不要这个是吧？新加坡的是吧？
No.
可是啊，从小学的特殊做啥么就，考的特殊做教育，谁把谁不喜欢就是。
No.
那上学是吧？一旦嘛，培训上嘛的啥样就天天这个课上的了，你谁把谁不就是呢？是不是呢？差不多是个是吧？ 反正我都谁把对象都考着当这些在刚刚，对，偏没都差不多就说啥是吧？他说，
No, so.
超过这底下的没有形成，是吧？是不是吧？是不是能够土豆是不是呢？土豆其他空热对不对？是不是是吧？
No.
我这个。
No. Great master Aryadeva in his 400 stanzas on the middle way also tells us about the benefits of understanding, reflecting on emptiness. Even if we have not yet realized what emptiness is, if our we have what we call doubt inclined towards, favorably towards emptiness, right? We have all kinds of doubts, remember? The doubt that is favorably inclined towards emptiness, that doubt mind is very powerful to be able to kind of shake up our grasping at self. It tatters the samsara, it says, right? It's like tattering cloth, right? As Geshe is saying, that usually we have this kind of fixed notion of grasping at self, attachment, the anger, everything looks like so fixed and so powerful, like here, right? And so once we really have that, even that kind of doubt, more powerfully inclines towards the emptiness of intrinsic existence, right? In the right direction, that doubtful mind is very powerful to give a punch to the grasping at self and make it like, okay, now it looks like there's nothing that's so fixed, So it really is very beneficial. So we need to stop there today. We welcome your questions and anything online.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
We have one online so far.
Yeah.
He asks, does the ability of human perception to perceive reality both correctly as emptiness and incorrectly imply that the universe of dualistic consciousness is broader than the universe of ultimate reality.
Okay, I need to hear one more time at
Sure.
least.
It's and I also have a little in
Sure.
brackets translation of
Sure,
that
sure,
too. So the exact question again is asking, does our ability or the ability of human perception to perceive reality both correctly as emptiness and incorrectly, does that mean that the universe of this dualistic consciousness is actually broader than the universe of ultimate reality? So in other words, is the human imagination, even with this misperception, is the human imagination somehow bigger or broader than ultimate reality?
Okay. Traje thone ke kandi shue shio rwa ke di sigdu tanganzo tanda rwa mi ki ta temba ni ki rwa ke ni shu di ta yang ta ba to ba ne lo ba to ye ni ba shio rwa swa ke siti kan li ya nganzo li ya ni nang ki rwa ke ta lo de shuk cham shu ye sa re swa ke ni de ni nang ke lo di ene kar so gore tanda tendam temba rwa ke don다 demba 코라레 갸체를 차도요서 다고라 인지 추와당다 로하게 니낭 기다 로서 로하게 시아바 세겐데 든담 dembal레 바 갸체를 로하게 든담 dembal레 다 갸체서 게 생기도게 So Geshe wants to know what you mean by the dualistic perception broader than the ultimate reality.
So let's say maybe my current perception or our current perception that let's say has the possibility to perceive emptiness correctly and incorrectly. So correctly and incorrectly together. Is that
that's the dualistic?
That's what he's saying is dualistic. Is that actually broader or vaster than just ultimate reality?
So what does it mean, broader than ultimate reality? Yeah, that's what Geshe needs a clarification. What does it mean, that dualistic broader than ultimate reality?
So this person is saying, what I think they're saying is in our current state, we have this imagination that maybe sees things correctly, maybe sees things incorrectly. So to this person, there are many options with imagination. So is that, let me look at their exact word. Is that somehow, he says, bigger?
Yeah, so what does that mean, bigger than the ultimate reality? That seems to be the important part, right? So what does it mean, bigger than?
Yes. I think they're flipping something on its head.
So maybe we'll follow up that. Can you ask that, what does it mean? Does it mean like it falls outside the true truth or something bigger than that? What does it mean, right? Then we'll come back to that. Right?
Yes, let's do that. Okay, thank you.
Give me another question there. You have? No. Oh, we will come here. So we will get back to you. Please clarify that. What do you mean by that? Whatever dualism you defined, right? Being able to perceive the two realities correctly, incorrectly is bigger than the ultimate reality. So clarify that, and we'll come back to you.
Yeah. Okay, I have a few questions.
Sure. So maybe one at a time, so that I don't get confused.
So would it be correct to say then that the relative self, or this continuum of experience that experiences rebirth and samsara and karma, that is only has substance temporarily? So it's basically, there is no permanent self, or what you would say the self-sustaining, substantially existing self.
Yeah.
So the ultimate reality is that's just temporary phenomena, just like all the other temporary phenomena that only exist in relative reality. Is that correct?
Okay, so your question is that the ultimate reality the relative reality is temporary. Is that what you mean?
Right. Yeah. And the self or a notion of self that as we perceive it to exist is just basically it's just temporary.
Temporary means it will end somewhere, or you just mean what do you mean by temporary?
Right. Like when let's say if I were to achieve liberation from samsara.
Right.
And realize emptiness,
right,
then
that self stops.
The self doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. Sure. Thank you. That helps. Yeah.
Okay.
Tanda chua shamba de gen ala se chero just nga she yoba gen ko ta gi ni nang di tondam dem bale che ja che la ro gen cho ja che lam ne de she jab da ro gen ang za ku mi do gen en len ja go la ro gen ti paru de koran chua dan she ro gen ta tanda di she do nga za tanda gen de ta gi gen di ro do me do sam ge ta tanya de yoba ta che ro gen ta kun zo dem ba sen ro gen Kwanasana tanya iba taa di ene takwa memba ina srwage, mitaba imba ina srwage. Mitaba imba ina takwa negab ki rangshin chu cha yorwa srwage. Negab ki rangshin chu. Negab yoy tingi rwage. Chidi ka nangi chu kari lagu yala negab sido ka pende nga tharba thobso na srwage. Dinde ki taa di meba cha rugu resko negab rwage. Tharba thob dide kala dinde ki taa di tong rugu rwes.
Negab sido kora keshi ku yudo shigur musu ko tsanmi ida rugo marwa.
No sir.
Ko ya takpa shamur ko.
No sir.
Keshi yudo de ko yu dere ko pende nga su lungpa de kewa shan lo mamo rezi de thongpo ko de yore ko keshi yudo rugo de. Tata tsanmi shing yudo yu de de do.
No sir.
Tata jiwa ra keshi yudo de ko tangme ma se sa yu de pa de sa ko le sangge da jibu yuge pa be kewa mamo shen la ko jwa yo sa.
Because I'm just saying again, Tanya River Tadi, that was a tong dragon, you are quite cheating. I'm not native.
That's it. I think what she belongs to the Gagasanga Jim Chassis. Don't dry on
Sanjay or Sanjay World Unity. So Geshe says, maybe this clarification might help where in the Buddhist schools of thought, that conventional self or a person or I is not permanent, it's impermanent. Right, but that does not mean that it is temporary in the sense that at a certain point of time it becomes non-existent or it becomes just like you think once you achieve nirvana then it's kind of stops there. The Buddhist notion of impermanence is something that undergoes momentary changes, isn't it? But at the same time that it could exist, right? For example, a person or a self exists forever, so to speak. Right now, where we are, once we become enlightened, being Buddha, right, that self still exists. It has changed its sort of nature in a sense, but it doesn't stop somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then maybe that answered my next question, which was that because I was understanding it incorrectly, I was thinking then it's useless for me to pray for intervention to, Avalokiteshvara or Vajrapani or Virgin Mary or whoever, if there's no residue or no some form of that self that still goes on after liberation, then.
So once you're liberated, there's no need to pray for them. That's what you mean?
No, I'm asking. So if I pray to beings who have been liberated,
right?
Is there still a being there somewhere who hears my prayer and who can take action and intervene if they feel like it?
Okay. Quran this dinde imbe ina da ngajon namju ke chi chene sel so ta ku iba ine re yishu Quran zo mashikal so ta ta ku yorwa ge chi de kal ngajo le so ta ba ina de ya jingu du tenge da ju ya dinde yor yo ma res borwa sa ge che de ya chene sel so ta ku ine re ro Quran zo yishu ki cheda che men yishu mashikal so ta ku ro ge and so ta be de pendo me ba cha ro sa chu chi chilam na ya ro ke yo ma ro sa ro ge ne na
chilam na di yo because the mother is on the year to the so bezo she the you mama so sang you the top the sang you she's the she's a maybe go pay to go call the tea call it to the so you the pendo to moto could so young lana tava the sang you're a single mother.
Geshe says, no, I'm still like for us to be able to become a Buddha, right? We need to create a lot of causes and conditions for that. So as a part of that, praying to whoever we believe in, so that's a part of that. So it's not like useless or anything like that, you know. Yeah, does that help? Yeah. So you can pray to whoever we believe in, they can still sort of bless us or give us inspiration, because that's a part of creating a lot of causes and conditions to get to where we want to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, there is still someone there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have one question.
Sure.
What are the questions that you ask to tease out or prove the ultimately existent mind or consciousness?
What are
the questions you ask to tease out or prove the ultimately existent mind or consciousness?
Okay, I'm
What are you
still not
asking?
hearing the whole thing. Yeah, could somebody help me understand the question again?
How can you prove that there is an ultimately existent mind or consciousness?
Oh,
What questions should we ask ourselves in meditation
Oh,
to
okay.
understand this?
oh, so what kind of question should we ask in our meditation to understand?
That there is an ultimately existent mind or consciousness.
There's ultimately existent mind or consciousness. Is that what you
Yes,
said?
that's right.
Okay.
Taking apart the table, and I understand that, but how do you try and take apart
That's
your
right. Then
consciousness so that you know that it's not like a table, that
Right.
it exists?
Oh. Okay. Okay. Ultimately, right?
The mind exists ultimately, but the table doesn't exist ultimately.
Ah.
How can we prove that?
Okay.
Yeah, what do we ask ourselves?
Murati di this kurang anjo da jik tongpa ni kwal ya kom kyab so seminar chuwa ta da la sigus roge. Ani tagi king this so chok de cha sha we na da tenju be la bin chok sem de tokpa ta zam res roge. Kang ba shi di re ne ma re cha she re ne ma re nyam do cha sha de ma re la roge. Je de ta morang king anjo number share je roge. Number share di ta rang shem ya sam tan de kala ani chuwa khar kar tang res roge. Number share second ko to ten ne de yo mar we sa gen di chok de ne gi mar roge. Number share second ko tondam gi ne de yo mar we ko. Den tambar.
막다 균을 찍발이다. 조사대 거를 희가지 교수 가서 들이 매를 동으로 그러. 또 습지다 그 배참이 주고 뭐그 주라도 뭐 거랑서 다가라 딱다 돼 되고 뭐. 그 조시 양에 되고 뭐 조시 이제 뭐고 시야야 칼칼제 이 코는 내가 양이 돈이야 지금 양이 용제고 들으니.
Okay, I'll get with that. But chiwa kartang ko was same rangshi mebal raw ha kwai so same na kom je chiwa kartang ko same rangshi mebal resha yiri kwai kimjen ka chiwa dang ro ge.
sim rangshi mebal pe thangbo khangsa de ne khangsa sa de go de to lakpa de kangpa de kha de shiwa de de tang tong chen ji re to mo ro.
Ro. You know the number share with the contest.
Number shiwa de no call geji mo bo da geji thano shogwe shiwa nigun shiwa shiwa geji mo bo ro.
No.
진짜 지우듯이 그 촉발을 지금 뭐도 지금 다 니데스 도도 죽대야 말이야.
Okay, now I think we're getting somewhere there, right? So, but to make sure Geshe answers the questions, right? So Geshe says, you know, with the table, right, from Prasangika Madhyamika point of view, it's a merely labeled reality, right? If we analyze it, every part of the table is not the table, neither is the collection of the table. But it's simply called table, it functions as a table, right? So with regard to the consciousness, right, as you're meditating on that, the emptiness of intrinsic, the emptiness of the consciousness, let's say, right? So the kind of question we're asking is, as Geshe said, like the consciousness has also many moments, right, that build the consciousness. We can think about your consciousness yesterday, this morning, right, this moment, later, whatever. So it has many parts. So every one of that part of your consciousness at the moment is not the consciousness, right? But all put together is simply called consciousness. Now, you said it ultimately exists, right? Geshe said what it means is it does not exist. If you mean ultimately as intrinsically, it doesn't exist that way. But ultimately in the sense that it exists forever. Right, unlike the table, right? Table will collapse somewhere. The consciousness never ceases, but it undergoes changes, isn't it? That all the defilements are purified, and now you're evolving, and then you become whoever you become, isn't it? But nonetheless, that consciousness, it exists, continues. Does that help you a little bit? Answer your question or not?
Is it also related to proving it through looking at cause and effect, looking at what is the effect of your actions when you think about doing something, you do something bad, something bad follows, you do something good, you become happier.
Right. Okay.
Is it also related
Yeah,
to
sure.
looking at that?
Then the Quran this with the Tandanganzo, number several Rangshim Abalia, Tiwa Tang Salate de Galia, and the Sosogi, Chawasangi, Lendelia, Dewa Yorves are again. Susan Namji Yaga saying, Kibur Shingur again. Do what it's saying, Maji Shingur again. She's that the Lende, that Judah David Namshalia, some of the Dewacha de Yorves again. Judah David Namshal, some of the time, the Tanda number several Rangshim, some of the time, the Dewa Yorves again.
Judaism got number of young men who you go over.
No.
So today, so go to this was the Namja must have did. I said, she was said that the Kansas, she was said, sounds or shut out because sound of you know.
No, sir.
And they could have got out of the charge that so the 下场不是去路的，总是在写下去呢。
No.
俺个偏多种要么的喜欢是吧？
No, sir.
但是过去去节目的我总是什么可是懂，看了说的那些人，所以呢，
No.
那个电视同学都也是吧。
No, right.
个培训当中什么东西，个上的大家什么都研究这个这要么的是吧？
No.
但这个要就是过他个就是要小人呢。
No.
你靠恰这些有的如何的是？
No.
现在个培训当中是如何的是？
No, sir.
培训当中养人个，如果么也，那么小可能我个养人都个，看现在数据有什么是，可能独家的些，的养的些，可这些要么是。
No, sir.
培训当中如何是？这个是反正，出家做的对了，那出家做培多个女家了呗。 咱们刚刚别咱们说的这独家这说这个现在个培训当中这些的培多这些都就了，
No.
奇怪的。
No. Yes, Geshe said, yes, that's related too, right? You can think about cause and effect. And as a matter of fact, as we said earlier, when we are practicing and we see that our consciousness is improving in the sense, right, we get rid of negative thoughts and we improve. So there's a cause and effect relationship there, isn't it? How you're improving the state of your mind. But all through that, the consciousness remains, it doesn't lose its nature doesn't change into anything else, isn't it? It just improved in a sense. So to exemplify that, Geshe will give this example of how, say, we have the copper plate, okay, not a plate, copper sheet. That's what I mean. So now it depends how we are going to mold something out of that, isn't it? How valuable it is. Somebody can use that copper metal to make a pot, cooking pot, right? So it's useful that then. Somebody can make that into a trash can, isn't it? Somebody can make that to build a Buddha statue or something that everybody will worship, isn't it? Whatever form it has been created into, the copper has remained the copper, isn't it? But its value has changed depending upon how we molded it, isn't it? So we cannot say that consciousness itself is good or bad or anything like that. Okay? It depends upon how we, what do we do with that, right? How do we change it for better or worse? That's that. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So Renee's question was the fact that the consciousness, the mind produces effects, and is a proof that it ultimately exists. Can that be used as a proof that it has an ultimate existence? Do you understand? The fact that the mind is a functioning thing, it produces effects, it's affected by causes and conditions, and so on and so forth. That is a proof that it ultimately exists.
Okay, so I think we need to clarify what does it mean ultimately exists.
No, that was the question.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's how to say. When I said that, then he get different.
Okay.
As I said, if we say ultimate as intrinsic, it doesn't, right? But
Yeah,
ultimate
well, that's
is
the point.
existing
Yes,
ever. Yes.
exactly. That's the answer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
actually, this is a proof that it does not ultimate. It's a proof of the opposite. So the question is it a proof that it ultimately exists? And the answer is no. It's a proof
That's
that
right.
it does not ultimately. It's a proof of the opposite.
Right. If
Right.
ultimate means intrinsic reality, yes, it proves the
Yeah,
opposite. You're
yeah,
right.
because
Right.
if
Right.
something produces effects, we
Right.
tend to assume that that's
Right.
really this is the foundation of everything. This
Right,
is
right.
it ultimately exists.
Right.
This is the buck stops with that thing.
Right.
Okay,
Okay,
but
yeah.
it's a proof that it doesn't stop
Okay,
with that
so
thing.
let
There's
me
no-
double check, right? Just to make sure, right? You get. Lakona this word tagi morang samlo di men ro siguro kaisana number share singa jor wage. Tendam the yor lab ro. Tendam situ kala dang anzo chika rangwen yober ro wage. Ko chena ni ju yugen ro wage. Dinde yobe na tagi anzo kuda debi namsha share ba digi ko tendam da me ba di dubje go ro ma do yober dubje ko yo mar wage. This go ro wage. Kin sense way. Number share ba di tuen tambar yonas rangshin drube yoba yonas and tagi anzo share de number share ba yardia ta yor juda debi namsha share di tuen tambar me ba dubje re ma do yober dubje mar wage. Der wage. That's right, yeah. Well, if you think in terms of like say the consciousness is something findable and ultimately existent, then all the things we said earlier, cause and effect changes, right? That is to disprove it, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
통한다고 저선이 거 담고 누구는 거 되니 그 넘버 문제 주라사 명차로.
Right. So if consciousness were to exist ultimately in the sense, then there's nothing we could do about it. If it started as being good, it will be good forever. It started being bad, then nothing you can do about it, right? That's the issue. Yeah. So did the person clarify? Okay.
They've left. However, we have two very clear questions
Sure.
online. So the first one asks, does thinking of the subtle mind that goes from lifetime to lifetime as I or me cause a problem? Meaning, does it slow down our progress in understanding emptiness? Is there something else we should label this ongoing mind as?
Apart from I or something. Should we
Yeah,
label
apart
something
from
else?
I or me, yes.
I don't know. Yeah. So by subtle mind, you meaning the mental consciousness or the subtle mind as we talk in the subtle one, clear light mind? Okay.
The question is it a problem?
Right.
To label that as I.
Oh, I see the problem, right? Labeling that, right. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think that's what Sarah's
Okay, yeah,
asking.
yeah.
She said, and Sarah, feel free to keep typing in, but she says the one that goes from life to life.
Yes.
That's the
So can you
clarification.
repeat the question one more time, right?
Sure. Does thinking that the subtle mind that goes from life to life as I or me
Yes.
cause a problem in understanding emptiness? Is there something else we should label this ongoing mind as?
Okay. Let me see. The Tibetan direction tagi karso gore disamatho sabda gen anzo kiawaching ne chigla dongen ki thabesem chior la roage. Di tan Tibetan digi dinde ta kiawaching ne chigla dongen thabesem dila ten nga senge do de roage. Dinde yoba taga ranking anzo tongni toya ya kutes ma kubata tes karso gore di parche chigor besudo gen. The chigi to order again. Watching the chick do number seven your wage, number seven del temper touch do or love wage. In that touch yours love what that touch. In that lava dig is when you have a dig Tony Toya and a Gaden chicken vessel, Tony Toya test castle to the man who rest again. Task lava dig, that's talk without some. Tony Toya la Matacola task lover wagon, task tower sons, tower dig, Tony Toya ya Gaden chicken vest. Madani, can Malab Shash and that again. But was this some good your again? That the engine to or again. Can't sing that to her. Can't do sing that. I'm just making sure Geshe understand the question. Can that can you watching a children Tash your rest lover again? Tash yours the current rest do color, Tavis same the number share rest lover again. That's how a number share the color tar rest lover was at a tar lava the geese was a two other again. Because Tame to again, tar rest lavina, then Tame to the latest man near skier romantic to the man go rest against the Rodi. The Tanya de Betadder again.
The thousand even look the light,
어디 당던 세베기 디첸 다 지어로 하게 다 라버선다 디 돈이 도야라 뒤중 망한 고거를 왜서다 당던 세베 다 지어를 섬 돈이 도르게 뒤중 망 고거로
돈이 도와 그 계제식으로
계제식으로 써라
계제식 말데 뒤여서 돈이 도세 랑도시아지 카이도 다디베나 인 랑도시아요 뭐 디가사디 동행과 개와사 대화중과 뭐 시고는 배워 찾아라
no
그 요인자
나래
이니야 저와자 좀 사지야 타라테야 저와주
지여로 발라
시드메나
뭐래
다 다이도 다디베나
나래
저와시아요 뭐
딱던 세병원에 세병은 계제식으로 하게 딱던 세병원에 다 자기 샤바는 계제식으로
다디 샤그마
자나는 계제식으로 정말 와 텐주 정말
There got Chinese, Doctor shout,
no.
you
So through struggling, so now I think we're getting somewhere there, right? Sometimes I don't know, maybe I'm on the bad side of Geshe here, or he's on my bad side, or somewhere start hard, like he's talking this way. Okay, so maybe this is what the issue is, right? This is what Geshe said. He remember talking about. We talk about different schools, right? One we said. In most of Buddhist schools, leave the Prasangika alone, right? They said that person is findable, right? There's a person that goes from one life to another life. And you said, name that. Well, mental consciousness is a subtle, we call it subtle, relatively, right? Compared to the sensory consciousnesses. Are you with me? So if that's the belief one has, right, that means there has to be intrinsic self or I there, right? That's identified with the mental consciousness. From Prasangika point of view, then that really prevents one from understanding the emptiness. Are you with me? Now, if you're looking from Prasangika point of view, where we say that I or a person is merely labeled onto, right, aggregates, and there's a person that goes from one life to another life, there's a merely labeled I or the self that exists. That self does not slow down understanding emptiness or anything like that. Because that exists, so there's a possibility to understand emptiness, there's a possibility to improve. I hope that clarifies, right, after all that messiness there. Yeah.
I believe that answers her question based on some notes she sent me. Thank you very much. And one other question online.
Okay, this will be the last question here.
Okay, thank you. Does conventional existence only exist dependent on the perceptions of sentient beings, or does it have some type of existence independent of the perceptions of sentient beings' minds?
Sure, thank you. Now that would be very easy to translate. Some question just comes like that, easy to say. Tiwa thama di tini rawage, tiwa di tagyatan di sigidu, tanda nganzo kunsob tempa sayasyo rawage, kunsob tempa sayadi shayadi, and simjing ki ta karso gore, piki karso yujen la tuyani rawage, kunsob tempa di shagaya rawesa rawage, simjing ki yujen la maden begi, and shirubi chio kaya yoma rawesa rawage, kunsob tempa shadan di rawesa, simjing ki ta yujen sa gore, number shio rawage, tuyateba rig digate kunsob tempa rawage, di membe chio dinde yoma rawesa, simjing ki yujen la maden be chio dinde yoma rawesa gore. Simjing da simjing ki. Simjing lana ke di phoju kaw marda ke. Simjing ki ta number sheba ta yujen la maden be, yujen la maden be. Simjing ki ta ke number sheba ta sa gore karso ta ka ji. Tobe tangsam dige sama lo gen dire be sa kunso tempa ro ge.
저리지도 다 탱겨오시는 또뭐 땅서도 뭐도 현실 그런 초도 디레 땅서서 니기 디레 민도로
La.
지금 요 정서 요래서 가래 통화를 강화를 가래스는
Mardis ko madage taking also ke tini namsha shati roage kunso tempa sa je roage kunso tempa sha jogche ge lo che roa ti kono sama ngza semjing ge roage ta number sheba se ne mindu roage to gwen gwen pa sha sha jang robe sa the semjing ge number sheba maden be ge ene chhe ne yo ma robe sa ko da
simple number share cái top cái top cái mà share cái đâu luôn như mình đâu sử dụng
심진 그 속으로 다 양게
là
똑바로 샤서 심진을 샤고로 하게
top cái ta ta simple share cái đâu mà sang chỉ số top cái số sang chỉ top cái
샤바는 얘네 군사 대바 주고 말이 된단 대바 다가 차도 말왜
là
된다면 대바야 심진기 가서 똑바로 다고 샤 말왜
top cái ta sẽ được cái cái top cái ta sẽ bị chả rồi
맞아 똑바로 수 교육 똑바로 게 심진 교육 똑바로 양 가서 파괴 교육 똑바로 미교하고 똑바로 그래
top cái simple top cái top cái
대니 시야
就在那就是可能top cái top cái rồi我下个是
쪽제 된거
现在开过嘛但是就在这边top cái rồi听下什么
yeah I'm getting there okay then 쪽제 된거 동의에 대해 심진 똑바로 샤교를 왜
really
okay now I'm getting there right but I'm just like American, try to get everything clear as possible. Otherwise, I can't translate it, right? I mean, there's something there, right? Then I might make up things. So the question was, again, repeat me the question. It's only about conventional realities, right?
Yes, does conventional existence only exist dependent on the perceptions of sentient beings, or does it have some type of existence independent of the perceptions of sentient beings' minds?
Okay. So through all that discussion, clarification, I said, it's not just the conventional realities, right? Both realities are dependent upon the thoughts or whatever labeling of the sentient beings, isn't it? And so it's not just conventional realities. So I was trying to pinpoint it. Geshe talks about table. I said, I know table, right? But what about the emptiness of the table? Is that also dependent upon the thoughts of the sentient beings? Geshe said, yes. Okay. So, and we will continue, okay? Is that the question,
Yes.
class?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Geshe-len.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tenzin.
So we will continue. So I don't have, oh, I have prayer requests. I thought I don't have. See, when you get too much into emptiness, conventional realities, somewhere, they are complementary. They have to come together there. Can you just share the direction? Mengalia, Shartse changes the wagon. There is surgery, Shartse resa. Searching Tenija Sarwage, Shartse Lamron, you come to Naronasa. So prayer request has been made for, I hope it's a Sachin Tenija or Teniha. I don't know, it's a JA. In California, J becomes Ha somehow. So it's having a surgery on January 21st. So prayer requested for a successful surgery. And then we can think of prayers for many others, right? We have seen so many tragedies here and abroad. Toje la nyombe jomden de senzan tebe ngendun tungen sen doson sangye men bindur yaye vela chanze lo teyata on bekaze ma bekaze no samuga de so Tayada bekaze ma bekaze ranzo samuga de so ha gawa de nyodo da membe kyabon robju lowa jinjama e sala bara show. We will do the prayers of our gurus. We are on page 3. Lord Yanzi, Yudon, Begandi, Geshe Phuntsok Gyeltsen, Minba Shen, Tenba Zinla, Wando Jichu, Tanyan Chugun Gyala, Sowan de page 5. Mawan Dame, Gunyan Dongan de, Kanri Jonso, Nienda, Senzaba, Jamgun Yawa, Niba Yapse, Tanson Dinzi, Mabe, Shiba Zi, Jinjin Chebe, Yingwon Zip. 谢谢你们常驻点这个龙道他们这北云，对这亚洲更多小点说，台上广大其实准备用着有的特别年个性，龙日提前那边本特别刚的大部小点说，到那后面这把那么的 天当周北，平地准备是轮着居民设备。街上对接人多，小店说，其中拉面土街没有拉面的，街上对接电当上面，说说多接多多，其他门边等个轮着说page 9。Ramja Shingen Gombo Zeba Me Zodo Namje Yeyun Zhongma Sho Shosho Seye Lazo Tamje Dade Mishi Choge Ngodo So Tubden Chedang Losan Yab Shido Tenban Zembe Beyun Je Tade Duje Gyongwe Yangde Ninje Wongbo Sowa De Jiden Sumgwe Chana Beme Tenbe Zawa Soso Tawa Namda Chudin Yangda Langba Ye Losan Yenden Bedo Shed Tujon Gyeltsen Nunzin Yangbe Shen Samjo Namjue Changzin Zunbe Gomjon Shila Songjo Debu Den Denbe Ngada Chenbo Shabde Chebe Dongan Gowa Mojo De Zunbe Rilan Siye Mongjo Zunbe Dunden Leshe Deng Kedu Shenyin Chenbo Shabden Shu Kebe Langdo Gushe Zeta Ze Zunbe Chara Niezo Rangsa Sangbe Dije Rigon Yishe No Sumden Shenyin Chenbo Shab Tesan Rolan Zhuwe Tende Jin Menjong Dajue Zangme Sijin Labjin Zidin Dende Besha Wa Zenden Shenyin Chenbo Shabden Shosong Gyawa Seje Chenla Dan Tuden Damjin Songmen Chen Daja Lasan Dabe Dem Shida Mumben Lindu Shu Changju Simjo Rinpoche Maje Bana Jeju Je Gewa Nyamba Kone Gondo Bewa Shu Tongni Dawa Rinpoche Maje Bana Gewa Nyamba Meba Kone Gondo Bewa Shu Sa Shi Beje Joshi Medo Zhang Rira Linxie Yinde Genba Sanje Shindo Mede Will 如果能到新了，就把说看着绕外过个新工作，平常对我马里就接着希望定真叫做下边世界八度研究去一等古如热那么。你养大呀，民叫我更多养大拉玛等这面确实白了龙之节，啥大龙之云的，我就讲给我把牛多说。